around the next bend. You give us enough for every day. God, help us to remember that you are enough. Your grace is sufficient for us. And Father, as we prepare to hear your word today through James, Father, just open up our hearts to hear this message. Mine included, God. I just thank you for how you shape me as I have been able to really dig into this, Father. So I thank you and I praise you in Jesus' name. So we're going to be in James chapter 5, verse 12. It's rare that we just look at one verse at a time. Usually I take a bigger chunk, but this is huge. So we're going to be talking ultimately about the danger of deception, but we're going to also look at be honest, be truthful, be trustful. So we're just going to read real quick, James 5:12. Now above all, my brothers, do not swear either by heaven or earth or with any other oath. Your yes must be yes, and your no must be no, so that you won't fall under judgment. Now, the main point, Christians must live a life free of deception, but overflowing with honesty. Who is the most trustful person you know? Maybe it's a family member, a parent, a spouse, a closest friend, your pastor. Who is it in your life that you could absolutely trust, knowing that they would die for you if it came to it? If you don't have that person, maybe you need to make better friends. I don't know. Now, are there people who trust you that way? Would someone say that about you? Or are you the person that people can't trust? James is going to give us an interesting point here. He's beginning to wrap up his letter. And in this ending, he says, above all. He's saying, in summary, all of this coming to conclusion, above all else. So this is an important aspect that we need to listen to. We need to pay attention to. So we're going to look at this verse in a few different aspects. And first, we see that Christians must not swear or take oaths. Kids, swearing is not like cuss words here, though you shouldn't do that either. What we're seeing is that many people take this swearing or taking an oath, a written promise or a binding promise, and they take the letter of the law and not the spirit of the law. Is James saying that we must not hold to an oath that we have made, or not to swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in a court of law? So many people have actually used this as a religious backing to saying, I can't be in court because I am not to take oaths, right? Well, James is going actually back to what Jesus has already said in Matthew 5:33-37. And Jesus says, again, you have heard that it was said to our ancestors, you must not break your oath, but you must keep your oaths to the Lord. But I tell you, don't take an oath at all, either by heaven, because it is God's throne, or by earth, because it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, because it is the city of the great king. Neither you should swear by your head, because you cannot make a single hair white or black. But let your yes be yes and your no, no. Anything more than this is from the evil one. So in this, Jesus is quoting from three different areas in the Old Testament. Leviticus 19:12, which says, you must not swear falsely by my name, profaning the name of your God, I am Yahweh. And then Numbers 30, verse 2, when a man makes a vow to the Lord or swears an oath to put himself under an obligation, he must not break his word. He must do whatever he has promised. And then Deuteronomy 23:21 through 23. If you make a vow to the Lord your God, do not be slow to keep it, because he will require it of you, and you will be counted against you as sin. But if you refrain from making a vow, it will not be counted against you as a sin. Be careful to do whatever comes from your lips, because you have freely vowed what you promised to the Lord your God. In the Old Testament, when someone took an oath, it was considered very serious. It was a legally binding agreement. When an Israelite would give an oath in the name of God, it was almost as if he was saying, I will do this up to, and if I don't, God can strike me down. That was how serious it was. It was signing your life away if you didn't keep your end of the bargain. But being that they were human and often really good at sinning, they began to pervert how God had established vows and oaths. They would say that if it was done in the name of God, it was serious. But if they were crafty enough and made an oath in something less than God, as Jesus was talking about, it's not quite as binding as taking an oath to God. So they would do as Jesus said in Matthew 5. They would swear by heaven, earth, Jerusalem, even their own heads. But Jesus shut that down pretty clearly. He said, instead of taking oaths and vows in life, Jesus says something else, which leads us to the next part in this. Your yes is yes, and your no is no. So doesn't that seem like common sense to us? That if I say yes, I mean yes, and if I say no, I mean no, right? But how many people do we know out there that don't actually live by that standard? Their life is full of lies and deception. So that is exactly what Jesus and James are both speaking to here. I grew up in a home that was very set and serious about being true to your word. If I say I'm going to do something, you had better believe I'm going to do it. If I say I'll be there, I'll be there. If I'm not, it usually means there was an emergency or something happened. So with that mindset and the way I was raised, I started putting those expectations on everyone else I was around. Well, it doesn't take very long to realize not everyone works that way. Not everyone thinks that way. They may say they're living it, but does our life actually represent that? When we say yes or no, do we hold true to that, to our word? How many of you ever bought a house or a car or made another big purchase in life? We did the really grown-up thing not that long ago about life insurance. Stack of paper, here's how you can die. And all these different things, and here's what's going to happen. I mean, there is just stacks of paperwork in these contracts, right? I should have brought it out and showed you. It's huge. Well, what are they for? What's the primary purpose? The primary purpose of a contract law is to enforce the agreement of the parties. For there to be a contract, substantial agreement must exist, and the parties must have freely intended to be legally bound. A breach occurs when one party foils the intentions of the other party. Now, we expect these from major things like buying a house and a car and life insurance. But how often do we use them in unnecessary ways? Now, don't get me wrong, they're not bad in and of themselves, but the key here is how we are to live. So when I was hired here at the church in January, I signed, and along with James Zoltanko, we signed a contract, right? Is it wrong? Is it wrong that I signed a contract when Jesus and James both say to not take vows or oaths or sign contracts? Is it wrong? No. Make that clear. We didn't do anything wrong. There's a side to it that we need to be protected individually and as a church. It states my role and my responsibilities. It gives clarity to a position that I fill. If I do not adhere to these set of standards, the board has a way to confront those situations. But does that mean that I just won't live by my word without it? No. Does this piece of paper, this document, define or decide how I'm going to live? Will I be a man of my word only because I signed a piece of paper? No, I choose to be honest and loyal every day. I choose to do what is right. My word means a lot. But if I sign this paper, am I saying my yes is yes and my no is no? Does that make sense? So my question is this: did both Jesus and James actually condemn oaths? I believe that both Jesus and James were not condemning oaths and vows, but were trying to get the church to see things like this as a thing we do, but not who we are. I think there's a lot of people that live their life by what's stated on a piece of paper. I will do this, this, and this, but I won't do that because it's not here. I'm going to live my life by this piece of paper, but don't ask me to go one step further, and I won't ask you for anything less. That's how a lot of people live. But we must focus more on who we are than what we do. If what we do in our daily life, whether it's signing a contract, making a business deal, whatever it is, if what we do does not show who we are, we have to change what we do. That's what James and Jesus are saying. If everyone lived truly honest lives, there would be no need for oath-taking, no need for contracts, but we live in a world that is set on getting the better part of the deal, getting the higher end, to find loopholes in a contract, to see how far they can push the boundaries of the letter of the contract or the letter of the law. Let me ask you this: are you a man or woman of your word, or are you defined by a piece of paper or an oath? Would you trust me with your life? Or can I trust you with mine? Do you live with honor, or are you living a life of deceiving people? James says that your yes should be yes and your no should be no. Why? James says it very clearly, so that you won't fall under judgment. Haven't we heard something like this before? It seems like talking and words and things that we say have a real impact in our life. Let's go back to James 3, 1 through 12. And I just want to read that real quick. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, knowing that we will receive a stricter judgment. For we all stumble in many ways. If anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a mature man who is also able to control his whole body. Now when we put bits into the mouths of horses and make them obey us, we also guide the whole animal and consider ships. Though very large, driven by a fierce winds, they are guided by a very small rudder, wherever the will of the pilot directs. So too, though the tongue is a small part of the body, it boasts great things. Consider how large a forest a small fire ignites. And the tongue is a fire. The tongue, a world of unrighteousness, is placed among the parts of our bodies. It can pollute the whole body. It sets course of life on fire and is set on fire by hell. Every sea creature, reptile, bird, or animal is tamed and has been tamed by man, but no man can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. We praise our Lord and Father with it, and we curse men who are made in God's likeness with it. Praising and cursing come out of the same mouth. My brothers, these things should not be this way. Does a spring pour out sweet and bitter water from the same opening? Can a fig tree produce olives? My brothers, or a grapevine produce figs? Neither can a saltwater spring yield fresh water. This whole letter that James wrote, at its core, is all about loving others, caring for those who are in need, being the safest, most loving people the world may ever know. And one of the key ways that James has pointed out that we do this is by the things we say. If we live a life that is dishonest, not honoring God, not being accountable to what we say or what we'll do, how will anyone trust the church? How will they trust me? And if we say that anyone can come through these doors and they need Jesus, and we're going to love them, but then they come and then we don't, will they come back or will they know the Father? Are we living a life? Are we living a life that is free of deception but overflowing with honesty? Are we people being true? Are we people who are being true to our word? See, we live in a culture that desires and thrives from drama, from almost daily expectation of being ripped off. We expect people to go against their word. We see it in our world governments, our nation, our news, the shows we watch. We might even see it in our own homes. We're set apart as Christians. We are to be different. We're in this world, but we're not part of it. We must be different. We can be different. So different that when the world sees us, they have to know what it is about us that is so different. When they come into this building, or when they come into your home, or when you're just talking to them, they should be able to trust you, to know that something is different about you. If we say we love the unlovable, we have to show it. So I want to talk about trust a little bit. I want to know if we can trust one another. Trust is more than just believing in someone. You say you trust me. But trust has another side of it. It's saying, will you do what I tell you to do, even if it sounds crazy? Sort of like we've talked about with the prophets. God said, go to the edge of the town and do these crazy things, go scream at a mountain, whatever. And they did it because they trusted him. They trusted God and did what he said. So are we living that life that is free of deception but overflowing with honesty? So right now, I've asked Robert earlier if he would help me with an illustration about trust. He has no idea what's going to happen, and I've not totally tested this out, so it's going to be even better. So Robert, if you wouldn't mind coming down. Now, Robert says that he trusts me, and I'm really hoping that that's true. That even if this goes south, we'll still be friends at the end of the day. Well, I want you to stand right in the middle, over here. Can you follow my instructions?
I might be able to follow instructions. Give it a shot.
All right, so let's see about this. Can you pat your hand on your head? Just, okay, can you pat your hand on your head and rub your stomach at the same time? Ooh, that's a gift. All right. Can you spin around in a circle? All right, I want you to hold your arms straight out like you're holding a cup, but just up a little bit, okay? Yep, just like that. You're going to hold these two cups for just a minute. I'm going to put a little bit of water in them. Still trust me? Okay. Who wants to be next? Still trust me. And so with that trust, you'll still do what I say. Okay? Well, I'm going to take one of them. Sure, you can put that arm down, but you got to hold this one up. So what I want you to do is to place the cup on top of your head, just like that. And then you're going to follow my directions. So what you're going to do is you're going to close your eyes, and you are just going to calmly turn in a circle, and then I want you to open your eyes. Okay? So on the count of 3, we're going to hold it out. On the count of 3, we're going to pour this water on our heads. Ready? Yeah. 1, 2, 3. So you did it, even though, but you trusted me, even though you were a little concerned, right? Now I'll tell you the truth. There's sponges in the bottom of that, and there was a lot more water than what fell on us, and it should have soaked it all up. But that's why you test these things before you do it. Anyway, thank you. Trusted me anyway. You're right, Val. We should have tested it first, but that's okay. Right, well, I figure if I did it to Robert, we'd still be friends, so that's okay. But the point was still the same. It could have been nothing in there, and he still would have done it because he trusted me. It could have been full of water, and he would have done it. That's the kind of trust that God expects of us when we say yes and no. That if God tells us to go out and do something and we say yes, we'll do it. When I tell you I will do this, you can know that unless something happens, I'm going to be there to do it. Do you trust God that way? You know, we've been going through in Sunday school about these deserts, and amazing what we see and how God provides just what we need. We can trust Him so we can walk that path every day. But we live in this world that even your pastor, as awesome as I can be, I will fail you at one point or another. I will slip and I will fall. Your most trusted friend, your spouse, the person you love and trust the most will fail you. We're not perfect, but we can look at each other's character and say that even when you fail, I still trust you. I still want good for you. You know, I've heard it said, and you've probably seen it and experienced it, that someone can work their entire life, do the right thing 1,000,000 times, be the best person you've ever known, and no one thinks a thing about it until they screw up one time, and everybody knows. And everybody holds it against them, right? That's the world we're living in. But for some, it's not always possible to get over it. It's not always possible to reclaim that trust to people. Sometimes we get burned pretty hard. So we have to look to God, that we pour our trust into Him. That when He says, Ben, you need to go to Superior, when you could go to Alaska, go to Superior instead. Okay. And you're scared out of your mind, you don't know these people, you don't like the weather, it's crazy, it's weird, and you're like, okay, I'm going to do it. And then you do it. And then God says, okay, but you're not done. Here's the other things I want you to do. And then all of us could look in our lives and say, this is how God directed me. Here's where I was obedient. Here's what happened when I wasn't obedient. There was never a time in my life that I ever thought I would go to Bible college until I walked through the front doors. It was not going to happen. I was very disobedient to God in a lot of ways, and He's like, you're going anyway. But look at the times where when we say yes or no and we're obedient to that compared to the times that we don't. Look at how character of people changes over time. For some of us, trust is a hard thing to build and to come by. A lot of us have been burned one too many times, and the last one was just too much, and I won't let anybody in past this brick wall. I know people who are burned by the church. They said, I will never go to church again. I was burned for whatever reason. Sometimes it only takes that one wrong thing to ruin a lifetime of work. Some of you may be in that boat. Some of you may be living in that place. Look at the world. And yes, even the church. We're all going to mess up at one point or another, but God doesn't. God is true. He is faithful. And as we close this day, I want you to just soak that in. That if God says, go to the mountain, start yelling at it as a sign for the people, okay, and then go do it. God says, hey, There's this guy you work with, and he needs me. You're the one I want to go talk to him. You don't know the words to say, I'll put the words in your mouth. I'll give you the words to say. It's really cool when you see God work through you like that. There's been a couple times in my life, and I've never really talked a lot about this, but I can only remember 2 times where I had to go talk to someone I didn't know about something, about God. And I remember walking up like, I don't know what I'm going to say. And then I just started talking. And in my mind, I'm thinking, this is not me talking. I can't even understand how I'm saying this. I don't know this. And it was God using me. I'm not special. I'm just obedient most of the time. But God used that. And he can do that with anybody if we're obedient, if our yes is yes and our no is no, if we live by our word, if we are honest with everyone. Sometimes honesty hurts, but it's still the best policy. So as we close this day, this is time we offer up as an invitation. And my friend Gene and I, he's a pastor at the church in Scottsbluff, he said, we haven't really done an altar call of any kind because for multiple reasons, but I said I try to do one every week, but it's not just to come and be saved. It's not just if you need Jesus, come forward. There is so much more that the church is for and that this time is for. I want to invite you forward. If you need prayer, if you need encouragement, if you are hurting or sick, we want to pray over you. If you need Jesus, we want you to come forward too. But if you've been a Christian but you've slipped and you're struggling with your word, come forward. And this is a time where you should feel the most love poured out in your life. I've said, seen, done a lot of terrible things in my life, and the most love I ever found was in the church. And I know a lot of people probably haven't, but I want this to be the place where no matter what you're going through, whether if you killed somebody, I'm probably going to have to call the cops. But I'm still going to pray for you. I'm still going to love you. But I don't care. I care. It's not too bad that we can't love you. It's not so bad of what you're going through that you're struggling that some of us can't get. We've all gone through different things, and we can all relate to one another in one way or another. And we want to do that for you. This is the body of Christ, and he established this 2,000 years ago, and this is what the church does. We just love. And that's what we want this place to be for all of you. Whether you've been here for 60 years or 6 days, this is where you should feel at home. So as we sing our last song, if you need to come forward for whatever reason, whatever it is, this is a time where you can do that. If that is not your thing and you can't do that, you don't like coming forward, because I was that person, it's a miracle I'm a preacher. I don't do forward stuff. But if you can't and that's just not your thing, catch me. We'll set up a time to meet. That's totally cool. All right? So as we sing this last song, this is that time to come forward if you need. And just know that we're going to be here to love you.
Would you stand?
Just as I am without one plea, but that thy blood was shed for me, and that thou bidst me come to thee.
serve his heart in a big way. And with his job, he does construction, and he's gaining more responsibilities and kind of moving into different positions. And one of them is kind of being almost a job boss of sorts for his company. And he's starting a new job this week in the company, but in Concordia, which adds a lot of things in life. One, he has to be gone a lot from home, from what's comfortable, and then he's responsible over other guys and the whole job. And I've done some construction work, and I've seen some of the ins and outs, and it's a lot of pressure for the boss. And so he's asking for prayer, and I would assume also for your family.
Yeah, I'm going to South Dakota this week, that new job that we're getting ready to start in a couple of weeks. And there's just a lot on my plate right now. So, yeah, just need prayer.
And Verlene's asking for prayer for healthy feet and healthy spirit, and wisdom through this time of healing and going into surgery. And,
I trust the doctors, but I want God there too.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're going to pray for these two real quick. Father God, we thank you for our brother and sister, that we are a family here. Father, I just thank you for Robert and his heart to serve you in so many different ways, Father. And I just pray that as these next few weeks come up, first of all, Father, guard his heart. You know the things that go on in his life and in his heart, and he's asked for peace in that. And Father, we just ask that if there are times where the devil is attacking, Father, help him to seek you out. Help us to keep him on our minds and on our hearts as we pray. And Father, give him strength as he takes on these responsibilities. Help him to sleep well at night, to be energized for the next day, to lead people in their jobs, but also to lead people in righteousness, as he's an example for you in a very dark place. Father, we pray for his family as well, as they will be without him off and on, Father. Help us to, as the church, to step up and help fill that gap in the areas that we can. But Father, give them strength through this time. Give them encouragement. Help them to know that they're not alone in this, and this, as they battle through this, that they can be encouraged that we're with them, but more importantly, that you are with them. And Father, we lift up Verlene as she is preparing to go in for surgery on her knee, Lord. God, just be with those doctors and the surgeons. We thank you for the gift of technology and science that has allowed us to do things in such a manner that we can be on our feet so soon. We just thank you for Verlene and her life and the work that she does in the hospital, Father. She is so encouraging to so many people. Father, put people in her life that will be encouraging to her. And Father, as she goes into surgery, we pray that you were just among those surgeons and those doctors and the nurses. Steady their hands and their minds to get the job done. And Father, we pray for Verlene that after the surgery that she will heal quickly and give her wisdom and strength to keep her spirits high in you and seeking you through this time of rest, Father. We love you and we thank you for all these things that you do for us, and we thank you for this time we have to gather as your family to love on one another no matter what's going on. We know that you're here with us because we trust you and we want to be obedient to you, and we love you and praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, we are dismissed.
Thank you, Richard. You can join us next week. I think Glenn will be back. We can always use extras.
15 years. Even though I'm there every day. I can always use them, don't throw them away. Because I give eggs and they don't always come